Hello people of YouTube, hello people of the internet, it's your boy Skinny Penis with a replay review. This is not a live gameplay for once, this is actually a nice game I had in Napoli on stream. Someone asked me to play it. I was about to refuse completely because it's kinda coin tossy if you play Napoli solo in randoms. If your DDs are bad, if there's an enemy carrier that grieves, there's a whole lot of limiting factors on Napoli that you don't really have great random games, especially solo. Like Napoli is best played with another DD in a division. Like Napoli's Malon, for example, is too turbo cancer to deal with because it allows the Napoli to just play freely. Since obviously it doesn't have Hydra, it doesn't have radar, it's very limited against enemy destroyers, and that's like the main issue with it. Matchmaking wise, we lucked out though. This is, I said it on stream already, this is the perfect matchmaking for Napoli. It can't be better. It's tier 8s, it's cruiser battleship only, there is no destroyer and there's no carrier and there's no submarine. On top of that, we're also getting shards as a map, which has insanely close quarter focused corners. So it's just overall the best. Like, I don't even think there is a scenario where you have better matchmaking on a better map ever. On top of this, on top of everything, we also spawn in the flank, which now essentially is a free play scenario for Napoli. You're not going to be spotted, you're going to outspot all of their cruisers, you have insane armor, you have decent speed, you have the smoke to disengage, there is not even that much radar, there's only the Puerto Rico and the Buffalo. Buffalo is very, very weak target, or like, not weak, like soft target against Napoli. It can never show broadside, but it also doesn't really tank your secondaries or HE well. The Puerto Rico would be a bit harder to deal with since the AP hits strong, harder, and it has a radar, so you can't really play around it that easy with the smoke close up. But as you can see here, Napoli is a flanker. That's also what it's played for in competitive. Mostly solo flanker or deep flank push, because the ship offers, or it's one of the only cruisers, together with Petro most likely, that has actual armor and an icebreaker, so you're super tanky. Obviously it's therefore limited in terms of DPM and utility, like it doesn't bring Hydro Radar, but it brings the smoke for itself. It's essentially like a solo play flank ship, or a heavy pusher. That's where Napoli is best, since also the armor scheme on the ass is super soft, so you can get punished greatly through the butt by cruisers and battleships specifically. Here, as I said, like we go instantaneously into the flank since we have the lowest concealment and shit. We catch this Buffalo doing some int move, whatever. But there was never a risk I even lose HP there. As you can see, the islands are covering me. I can go super close to the enemy while being safe. And I can also potentially now use my smoke whenever I want to go go dark and disengage. So what are we doing here? We're turning out to the left. There's no point in staying those in, specifically also because both battleships are potentially looking at us, and there is a Hindenburg Yoshino coming behind with a GK. Champagne doesn't even have a citadel, so close up I couldn't smash him. I only have my torpedoes to deal with that. My guns and secondaries are not going to do enough damage. So there's too many ships here that could potentially nose in towards the flank and push us. So staying here is not an option. You have to kite out. But as I already said, you have the smoke now to disengage safely since there is no more radar. You have the Hindenburg already coming. The GK is also like theoretically any of them could group up, or all of them could group up and monk you in the corner. And as you can see from the minimap, we are completely alone for now. But that said, the enemies are all spotted, so I have my outnumbered proc on top of everything, meaning I get insane dispersion now, since I already also run range mod and I got the kill for the Sansonetti proc, so my dispersion is definitely hilarious at this point, specifically the closer I am. It gets more and more accurate. Can get chunky HP hits. Also, in case someone permanently angles in, I can specifically target spots with my HE. What you have to do in Napoli, or what you always have to remind yourself of, is that if you play a Napoli like a permakiter, like any other HE slinger, you're not going to end up with any sort of meaningful damage. Neither are you going to get decent win rate. You maybe not even getting 60 if you permakite HE spam, because the ship doesn't have DPM. The HE pens more since it's like Henry HE, and but your dispersion on long ranges is super limiting. Your reload is super long, and the entire strength of Napoli is that you can play close up in brawl situations with torpedoes, armor, and strong, hard-hitting AP. Your AP overmatches light cruisers, and your AP has essentially the same performance of Henry, which means even at max range, 18 kilometers, you can citadel cruises pretty reliably. The only limiting factor being the dispersion again. But that's why, like for example, outnumbered. This was also pretty great. Outnumbered range mod, both buffing dispersion. For randoms, you could even go dispersion mod, making the dispersion super reliable. But you could see here, the moment we reached 8.7, 8.8 kilometer distance, I popped my smoke to disengage, didn't want to trade more HP here. Lots of Napoli players tend to keep their smokes for way too long. You have 3 of them, and the smokes are a great tool to inflict damage because you can play closer to the enemy without even being spotted. So try to use them as often as possible. There are always going to be opportunities, the same as a reload booster, where you pop the smoke, you did some stuff, and then right after, another great opportunity ensues. But to be honest, the smoke cooldown isn't that long, and you should really try to test the waters with smokes. It's an experimental gameplay style if you don't know perfectly how to play Napoli, and you're going to fail in it because you're eating torps, or you don't have complete information yet, and there's suddenly, for example, a radar or someone on your broadside. But the entire strength of Napoli is to be close. To be as close as possible, but not to be close enough for people to actually rush you. Because your torpedoes, while they do a lot of damage, you only have 4 per side, and you're not going to one-shot anything that's full HP reliable. You're going to inflict like about 30 to 40k to cruisers, but the most battleships only take between 20 and 30k from your torps. So you have to really plan ahead as to how fast you can kill a BB and how low a BB already is. Here I actually misplayed, I torped, but obviously the GK most likely turns in here. So my left side torps was gone, and now I had to do a really risky maneuver. Thankfully the GK shot immediately, and I can turn in front of him, torp him again. These kind of situations are situations where you don't really want to turn out that close to a battleship. As I said, the ass is super soft, easy to sit even, and turning at these kind of ranges against competent BB players will most likely net you a nice little death strike through the asshole. It's not gonna be that bad, but it can definitely, if RNG checks out, some battleships can one-shot you there. Maybe not a GK. But it was super risky, and I shouldn't have torped the left side, because the best play would have been to probably pass him and then torp, because then he doesn't really have the third traverse close up to keep up, and yeah, you can just outplay him. But as you can see, the smoke is already off cooldown. It looks like a long reload at first, but it's actually quite fast, because you're most likely going, if you plan it correctly, you're going to stay alive in Napoli. It just has a great HP pool and super strong armor. Also the armor is super strong, not only against battleships not overmatching you, but you also withstand an insane amount of HE spam, since most HE doesn't pen you at all. Normal cruiser HE doesn't pen you, and you have a very small superstructure. So overall you're just an insane tank with the added disengage tool of the smoke. So as you can see, I killed the GK. My smoke is nearly off cooldown. They don't have a radar here. They don't have a hydro close to me, so I can just go nose in permanently. And the moment I'm getting too deep into a crossfire, like here, I stop shooting and I'm going to pop a smoke, and I'm dark. And now I can watch my secondaries do funny stuff on these people. And the moment someone gives either flat broadside or goes super low, I can shoot and finish the kill, which I'm also going to do here. But you can just push through here. Obviously I'm angling more towards the Yoshino because he has torpedoes, and also the Champagne is most likely going to die very fast here. We get additionally also the Sansonetti procs, so main guns, torpedoes and secondaries reload even faster now. And you will see that the moment this guy goes a bit lower, I will shoot him with AP into the superstructure and just steal the kill. Maybe not steal, but definitely confirm the kill. Why not? Do keep in mind the secondaries are a nice tool to deal damage, but definitely don't play around. Like, don't play for the secondaries. Just see them as some sort of added benefit while you're playing close up to the enemy, but never rely or never play solely around the secondaries being in range. Focus on survival. The strength of this ship is being a deep flanker, as I said, that stays alive forever if played correctly. And the entire playstyle, as I already mentioned, with it not being able to HE spam from range. You can put a fucking lighthouse build on it with heavy HE, whatever the fuck. You're not going to end up dealing more damage than other people. Like, for example, Arto, I think, is EU leaderboard 1. Then there's, like, I don't know, FaZe and me. Guess I could be first if I play the ships again. Just because I played them when there was, like, less HP in the game. But you're not going to get more damage than us just by trying to perma-farm it with HE. And if you do and you get more damage, it's most likely going to not be more PR or win rate than us, because yeah, I said, like, you're going to have less win rate and you're going to have less kills if you just perma-shit HE. Your DPM is just disgusting. It's also bad. That's also the reason why I think range mod is way better than reload mod. While reload mod gives you more DPM, and maybe reload mod secondaries works, for example, in ranked super well, I think in competitive and randoms it's better to completely focus on your ability to kind of crossfire people with the heavy AP. People meaning like cruisers, but even battleships at range, you can easily chunk them for 6, 7, 8k, and it's about the alpha strike. Your fire chance is, or like your fires per minute are super dog, and it's like some sort of stealth assassin. It's what Sao probably should be, because if you are a stealth assassin, you have some sort of solo lone wolf gameplay and flanks, and for that to be sustainable you need armor and you need tools to disengage, which is the smoke. Yeah, Zao gets, for example, Hydra, but what does it matter? You're like alone in the flank, you're mostly not gonna play, for example, in competitive against anything else but an enemy Napoli. So that's also the reason why Zao is so useless in comp, or Yodo or anything, because Napoli is just you can't die in a 1 versus 1 against these cruisers. It doesn't matter that you don't kill them fast, they don't kill you at all, so it doesn't matter how long you take, they're not gonna do meaningful damage in between, unless they hit like some sort of wicked torps, but torps are a super situational armament, and the better a player becomes, the more situational the torps are, and the more you have to actually work people into a torpable position, or into a position where they can't dodge everything, or the torps make him go flat broadside, for example. And reload mod, as said, like the AP is Henry AP, so the idea is that you can punish people with AP at longer ranges, and since it has the petro dispersion curve, you always gotta keep that in mind too. Petro dispersion curve, meaning if you run range mod on petro or Napoli, your dispersion is going to be increased more than on other ships when you run increased range. Everyone knows by now, it's not a lot. It's not even really meaningful on most ships. If you play increased range, like range mod on, for example, US and BBs, but there is some sort of slight benefit, just because the max vertical dispersion is linked to the max range, but doesn't increase their scale if you increase the range. So obviously if you have 200 at 15, you're going to be having those 200 at 22 if you increase it to 20. So everything below that has better vertical than before. Then those numbers are just made up. It's just to like essentially give an example as to how it works. It's not that meaningful as said, but it helps. And on Petro and Napoli with these kind of dispersion curves, it helps more than other ships. That's why I also say that in randoms you could definitely run a full gun dispersion spec with outnumbered even, and you could become a pretty like, let's say exactly, you could become the stealthy assassin that Zao was originally supposed to be. You can play in flanks for free, and you have this decently hard-hitting volley all the time, and it's mainly about the AP. As you could see here, because I played so close up, mind though that, as I said, it's perfect matchmaking, perfect map, perfect spawn, perfect situation overall. But do mind that the most of the damage comes from AP. Then there's added damage from the secondaries and your torpedoes, which then goes to show you have to get all of your armaments into the game on Napoli to actually end up with great games. There is, as you can see, barely any fires, barely any HE spam has been going on this game. The thing is also, if you play close and you get your torps in because they're super slow, Like you have to be close to either hit a lot of them, or you have to get lucky. Like if you hit a Torb and you get a Flood, then you can use the HE. That's what I did on the Iowa earlier. But other than that, your HE is just use it when someone has like is perfectly angled to you and you have no means of defeating him, or nothing else is going to happen. There's no other opportunity for you to play the game. Or specifically use it when someone has proc DCP. You can use it for 3-4 volleys, then his DCP becomes off cooldown again, so then you don't have to really continue. But yeah, I said like play more around your positioning. Focus positioning first on this ship, and positioning in the sense that you want to be in a spot where you can use your AP, secondaries and torps, and armor. And then afterwards, just if nothing like that works out, then you can do the HE spamming from kite or something. Like some maps will or some situations, you just have to kite and wait it out. In any case, we end up with 289. Sadly, we didn't reach the 300. 300 on Napoli is actually super rare. I have never seen a Napoli game where someone got like 300 or even close to 300 just shitting HE from range, because it's just not possible. The most of the 300k games that I saw in Napoli are definitely, they're only slightly above 300. It's also like the damage record area, like 330, 40 is like already a record, I think. It's AP, torps, secondaries, and a bit of HE. It's like you have to get all of your armaments into the game, as said. And you can see here, like, we got 5 kills, we murdered some tier 8s, we murdered some tier 9s, there were also some tier 10 cruisers that were paid off and gave fly broadside. We end up as first in the team, because we slaughtered a bunch of low tier ships too. We don't end up getting that much XP. Obviously there were also no DDs, which was greatly assisting us. Here's the damage distribution in case it's interesting, and there you can see, coming back to the now probably very repetitive argument, we have a lot of AP damage, then we get a bunch of torpedo damage, and we have the added secondary damage, and all of that accumulated is actually getting us to nearly 300. And then there's some fire damage. That's, as I said, when I hit the turb on the Iowa, you can set 1 or 2 fires real quick, and yeah, it's pretty much just situational. We can go into the specs, because that's probably the more interesting thing. I'm playing completely basic cruiser spec. Sansonetti is great on Napoli, really, because if you play range mode like I do, the reload is pretty long, so you want the improved expert loader from Sansonetti. You also want, obviously, all the procs. That's obviously the nicest gimmick in randoms of the special commanders, the procs, and Sansonetti does really work on Napoli. Like Confederate is a very common achievement on Napoli, so is the the kill is very helpful again with the range, also a little bit of dispersion, copium. And in this spec, this is the competitive spec I'm running on it, I'm running outnumbered, and I didn't want to switch it for randoms. So this game, we were lucky that it actually procced quite a lot, and when it procs, it's hilariously disgusting on Napoli. It's the same as I said in the Marseille video. If outnumbered would proc a whole lot on Marseille or Napoli, those are like the perfect ships where it's instantaneously a disgusting buff to the ship itself. Like you're running around with a basic speed boost on these ships that are already really fast base, and you get 10% dispersion, which is like was like Deadeye for battleships on hard-hitting cruiser guns. It's pretty disgusting. Like outnumbered is strong. It's always the same problem though. It doesn't proc a lot, and as I mentioned, there's like no DDs to spot you or carrier and stuff, but it's also like enemy destroyers are mostly not spotted while your destroyers are obviously in your range. So the moment you have a whole lot of DDs, outnumbered is like never going to prop until like late game. So that there were no DDs, or if there are very few DDs, that also helps greatly with outnumbered. Overall, I would probably say that you get more use out of top grade gunners, since it also gives you secondary reload, 10% I think. So yeah, in randoms, you should go top grade. It's overall better. But if you want to test things out and you want to have funny outnumbered moments, go outnumbered. It's really good if you're on the back foot or a solo flanker essentially. Like you can disengage super fast or push super fast with very consistent guns. For the modules, I played a lot of Napoli in the past months or year, so I tested around a bit. As I said, I'm running secondary module with range mod at the moment. I think also that's overall the most viable build, because most, like, you have more situations where you can essentially help yourself with improved secondary accuracy and range, and also range mod at the same time. Do mind though that for 6v6 ranked, I could see, and depending on the map pool there, I guess, I could see reload mod, secondary mod being very viable. Um, I still wouldn't say it's better than range mod, just because I'm coping about the dispersion, I guess. But what's a really meme build is outnumbered with the 7% dispersion mod and range mod. That's like super meme, because suddenly you actually do have very, very pinpoint guns, especially at like sub 15 or even like sub 10 kilometers. They become really, really disgusting and pinpoint. So because of your concealment and armor and smoke, you can then really, really grieve certain ships. For example, light cruisers below 10 km with like a full gun spec, you can kind of hardcore snipe them, since you have like essentially spotting parity with like Smolensk, Colbert, Yinan, what is there, like even like Edgars or Neptunes, like very light. I mean, the thing is though, those cruisers are fucked anyway, so like why would you go? But also your AP volleys become super consistent on battleships with like 10k if you get to their broadside. So yeah, you can decide. I think this is the overall most viable build also for randoms. If you would pick top grade gunner now, I think it's perfect. You're good to go. Don't forget the smoke flag. That's maybe something I should mention. You can't take the smoke gen mod. That would be too busted. But take the smoke flag and hopefully have Sansonetti. It's a premium ship. Just put it on him. Sometimes you can get the shell hits in, and while running the smoke flag, you get your smoke, I think, up to 55 seconds or so. So it's pretty fun to move around in that. Yeah. As the last thing, I want to repeat it again. Don't play the ship around getting into secondary range just for the sake of the secondaries to go pew pew. They're not a main armament. I had to work first for the situation I had in that game to get the secondary damage. I had to get certain ships out of the game first and get myself then into a position where I can use the smoke for free for 50 seconds, and also time it in a sense that for example, the champagne was dead before my smoke runs out. Otherwise I would be in a double ship crossfire right in between, and that would have probably meant my certain death. So yeah, that's my take on Napoli. Try it out. Don't be frustrated if the damage is not as high as on other cruisers. As I said, it's not a high DPM HE spammer. But do feel reassured that if you make it to like 120, 130k average in Napoli, you're actually at the top of the players when it comes to like Napoli performance. Like 130 is super good. If you can keep good win rate and have decent average ranks with that, I personally believe it shows greatly that someone understands the ships or cruisers and gameplay and positioning and flanks itself, just because you can't fake the stats really that hard on Napoli. In any case, see you for the next video. Put your suggestions in the comments, I guess. And yeah, take care. Have a nice week.